Coming up next on Kids TV and Me, author, illustrator, and children's television enthusiast Joshua Stauffer will be talking to you today about this.
Frog and me.
Toad! How you been, pal?
Hot.
Well, you came to the right place. Nothing like a nice scoop of ice cream to cool you off. What can I get you?
Great hats, Mink. That is a whole lot of ice cream. What flavors do you have?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that, Toad. Ahem. We've got raspberry, strawberry, huckleberry, ground cherry, peanut butter, coconut, rocky road and fluffernutter, bubblegum, wild plum. Try the peach, I'll give you some. Triple ripple, choco-sickle, pumpkin spice and lemon slice, custard cream, mangosteen, jelly bean, and vanilla.
Oh, that is a lot of flavors to choose from. Frog likes chocolate, and I do too. But maybe he would like bubblegum today. And the peach was really good.
Hey, Mink, what's the holdup?
That'll be just a few moments, folks. Toad is choosing a flavor.
Ah, that explains it.
Oh, it is a very important decision.
Hello everybody, Joshua Stauffer here, back with another episode of Kids TV and Me. It is episode 8, and today we're going to be talking about Frog and Toad, Season 1, Episode 2, Ice Cream, and The Lost Button. Now, the ice cream story is based on the 3rd chapter of the book Frog and Toad All Year. My cousin's kids actually love that story. They always ask me to tell that story to them, so hopefully after I watch this Apple TV episode a couple times, I'll get even better at telling them that story if they ever ask me to tell it again. Now, this is going to be really interesting because we've never had an animated adaptation of the ice cream story before. When John Matthews did the claymation shorts of Frog and Toad, he only adapted the books Frog and Toad Are Friends and Frog and Toad Together, but he never did any shorts based on Frog and Toad All Year or Days with Frog and Toad. But apparently Apple TV went all out and adapted everything, and also made some new original episodes exclusive for television. So I'm anxious to see what they do here with the ice cream story. So without further ado, our analysis of Frog and Toad Season 1 Episode 2A, Ice Cream, will begin right now. Now, right before the show started, they showed a little advertisement for all of the Apple TV children's programs. They showed some clips of the newer Peanut specials, the Snoopy show, and some little clips of Frog and Toad as well. But I was kind of disappointed that they didn't show any clips from Harriet the Spy, because that's my favorite animated show on Apple TV right now. Well, either Harriet or Frog and Toad, I'm not sure which, actually. They're both great. But yeah, Harriet's a very underrated show that doesn't really get the praise and recognition that it deserves, unfortunately, but we'll talk more about that next week. Alright, Frog and Toad, Ice Cream. Now this episode's title card shows Frog and Toad sitting by the river. They're sitting on rocks and just soaking their feet in the cool water, which is perfect because that's how the story begins in the book. Okay, so in the book, the story begins with Frog and Toad sitting by the river, and Frog wishes that they could have some sweet cold ice cream, and Toad decides to go to the store and get some. But here on Apple TV, we see Frog and Toad walking along the river. Frog is carrying an umbrella and also a picnic basket, so I guess they're getting ready to go sit down somewhere. The TV show takes place a little bit before the book story did. I cannot stress this enough. I love the art style on this show. The hand-painted backgrounds and the way the characters are drawn. This feels so Little Bear. Little Bear was one of my favorite shows when I was very young, and the Frog and Toad was animated with a very similar style. This is interesting. Frog says, "Hello, pond." So is this a pond instead of a river? Let me see. I've got the book right next to me here. It was next to me, it's in my hands now, but you know what I mean. Oh, okay. One hot summer day, Frog and Toad sat by a pond. Oh, so it wasn't a river. Okay. All this time I thought it was a river, but it was just a pond. Never mind. For a second there, I thought they changed something. In the book, we don't actually see them sitting by the pond at first. The first picture in that story is Toad coming out of the store eating ice cream, but we'll see that on the show later. Frog asks Toad if they should set up their picnic blanket in their usual spots, and Toad says yes. So apparently this is something that they do on a regular basis. They come to this spot by the pond and have picnics together. Interesting. I like how Toad's just kind of slid down the edge of, I was going to say riverbank, but it's not river, so should I call it a pond bank or something? A little ridge there that he kind of slides down, and then he just kind of lies down and relaxes in the sand. I think that's sand. It's kind of yellowish. Maybe it's just some kind of dirt, I don't know. Frog asked Toad what he would like to do today. He said, should we skip some stones? And Frog's looking at the stones to pick up and possibly skip. And Toad says, blah, not today, Frog. Usually in the books, Toad says blah when he's really annoyed about something or when he doesn't like an idea. It's usually in a little bit more of a negative tone, but here Toad just kind of says blah casually and still has a little bit of a smile on his face. So that's different. Blah is one of Toad's most common catchphrases, in case you're wondering. Frog throws a stone into the pond and it skips 3 times. Very nice. Frog suggests, how about we play leapfrog? I'll be the frog. Duh, you are the frog, Frog. Wow. Oh, how's Toad gonna respond to that? You are the frog. Yep, called it. Frog says, see, we have everything we need to play leapfrog. So what are they gonna call it now? Leapfrog and Toad? Oh, that's hilarious. No, Toad says, it's way too hot, Frog. Okay, now they're acknowledging the fact that it's hot. We know where this is going now. They're gonna start thinking about ice cream soon. Now they're thinking about ways to possibly cool off, and Frog suggests that they go for a swim. If I hadn't seen the title for this episode, I would have automatically assumed that this was gonna be the swim episode, based on Chapter 4 of Frog and Toad Are Friends. But Toad says, blah, I did not bring my swimsuit. He called it a swimsuit this time instead of a bathing suit. The infamous bathing suit that he looked funny in before. And Frog has a whole bunch of other ideas that have never been mentioned in the book, ever. Like, should they make shell necklaces? Build a canoe? Dig for treasure? Compose an opera? Toad did sing in the story about the garden, Chapter 2 of Frog and Toad Together. He was singing songs to his seeds, so I guess the two of them could compose an opera if they wanted to. I don't think I've ever heard Frog sing before, though. But Toad doesn't want to do any of those things today, and he's not even in the mood for watching Frog do a magic trick, whatever that might be. Toad just wants to take a nap in the shade, until Frog finally suggests that they get some sweet cold ice cream. Now we're talking, here we go! Now we're in the book. Toad actually likes this idea, and he's going to tell Frog to wait there, and he's going to go get some now. Now Frog's going to set up their picnic things while Toad is away. Nice. And there he goes. He walks along singing to himself, ice cream, going to get some ice cream. For a second there I thought he was going to say, I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. When I was a little kid, the first time I heard that the little chant or phrase, I thought it was ice cream, use cream, wheels, cream for ice cream. I didn't know that it was supposed to be I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. I just happened to think of that now. Hey, there's Field Mouse. Did we see Field Mouse last month in Cookies? I know he wasn't in Cookies, but what about the letter? Was he one of the animals that Frog talked to on the way to the post office? I don't remember if we've seen him yet or not. But Field Mouse was one of the characters in The Swim. He was one of the guys who was waiting for Toad to come out of the water so they can see his bathing suit. So here's another example of one of those one-off characters that only appeared in one chapter of a book that's actually going to have a part to play in multiple stories. So this is really cool. So what does Field Mouse have to say? It looks like Field Mouse is drinking a big drop of water that was sitting between the leaves of a clover. I don't know if that's morning dew or if it's just water that dripped off from somewhere and landed in that clover. I'm guessing it's morning dew. Although, well, I guess it could be morning dew if it's humid. I was going to say if it's a hot day and the air is dry, there wouldn't be any dew, but somehow or another, Mouse is finding some water to drink in a very natural, nature-y kind of way. And this further proves the fact that in Frog and Toad's universe, all the animals are scaled realistically, frogs and toads are very small, and mice are also very small, so the toad and mouse are almost the same size here, and the clover leaves and flowers are very huge next to them. Really cool concept, I like that. Then Toad tells Field Mouse where he's going, and he's going to get some ice cream, and Field Mouse is very happy for him, and says, "Good luck, be safe out there, Toad." Yeah, knowing where this story is going, it would be a really good idea for Toad to be safe, but something really crazy is about to happen. You'll find out shortly what it is. Toad walks some more, sings some more, and there's Squirrel. A very tall squirrel, I might add. And she's got some kind of pink ice cream. Maybe it's strawberry or cherry or blueberry. I'm not sure which. But I must point out that we will see a squirrel later on in this story. I think she's going to come back later. Because there was a squirrel in the book in the ice cream story. And actually, wait a minute. Was Field Mouse in the ice cream story in the book too? Yes! Yes! The ice cream story features Frog and Toad along with Field Mouse, Squirrel, and Rabbit. Oh, this is brilliant! Toad is meeting along the way all the characters that are going to run into Frog later on. Wow! Excellent script writing, people! Great job! So first we saw Mouse and then Squirrel, and Toad's eventually going to say hello to Rabbit, I'm predicting. Here we go. By the way, what kind of ice cream is that, Squirrel? Are you going to tell us? Squirrel doesn't tell us what flavor that ice cream is, but she does ask Toad what flavor he's getting. And Toad's not sure yet, but he's going to start thinking about it as he continues walking. He says goodbye to the squirrel, and oh, he's at the ice cream shop already. Oh, is Rabbit going to come out the door maybe? Let's see. No! Toad just walks right into the store. Is Rabbit even going to be in this? I swore there was a rabbit character on this show. Well, we'll see. Let me look at that exterior of the ice cream shop again. Oh, that place looks lovely. It's literally the trunk of a tree with a window and a door cut out of it. And they got these awnings and lights and a little sign hanging there. And a fancy little table and chairs right in front of it. Definitely a much more elaborate setup than what they have here in the book. Yeah, in the book it's also the trunk of a tree and there's steps going up to it, yeah. And the sign on the awning says ice cream on the front, and it says soda on the side. Well, I assume it says soda, it just says ODA. And the story says Toad went to the store, he bought 2 big ice cream cones. So is that just an ice cream shop? Or is that like a little convenience store in the book? Because I see a bin of something. Like, is that supposed to be some kind of fruits or vegetables or nuts, perhaps? Yeah, I have a feeling that this store in the book sells more than just ice cream. It's probably like a Turkey Hill or a Sheetz or a Rudders or something. I'm from Pennsylvania, and those are the kind of convenience stores we have around here. Whereas on Apple TV, it looks like that is going to be exclusively an ice cream shop. I like how as Toad's entering the shop, he kind of hums and sings to himself, "Frog and me." Hearing him say that makes me wish even more that this show had an actual theme song to it instead of just a little music and opening title, a little 10-second thing. We do get that little song during the end credits, though. Okay, so who's this guy running the shop? Mink! This is a new character. There was no Mink in the books. So Mink is the guy who owns the ice cream shop. And he's got glasses and a hat and a shirt with a bow tie. Looking very sharp there. Nice looking ice cream shop, too. It looks like there's some candy on the shelf as well. And maybe a few donuts. Makes me think of the vintage candy shop we have here in downtown Lancaster. It's a really cool place. They have all kinds of retro candies and ice creams and stuff. And like a big old-fashioned kind of store. Although this store here on Frog and Toad looks a lot nicer as far as the interior design is concerned. Not as dark. Nice pink painted walls there. Oh man, that interior design is to die for. I really like how this place is designed. We got all these fancy designs along the I was gonna say wallpaper, but I think that's just the way the wood is carved. They got little ice cream cones on the ceiling. This is really like the vintage candy shop in Lancaster, actually, because that store has like a textured ceiling, these metal tin ceiling tiles with fancy designs on them. And down below, it looks like there's an ice cream cone, and a sundae, and a milkshake, all carved into the wood underneath the counter. That's really impressive. Actually, no, The place I was thinking of was not the vintage candy shop, although that's very similar too. Hinkle's Restaurant in Columbia. It used to be Hinkle's Pharmacy, now they expanded the restaurant and they've got a huge gift shop and a bakery and a candy counter and an old-fashioned ice cream soda fountain. That's what this looks like. This looks very much like the ice cream place at Hinkle's. Yeah, because they got the glasses on the shelves back there and the textured ceilings and the wooden counter. The one on Frog and Toad doesn't have bar stools, though. But yeah, I was just at Hinkle's like about a week or 2 weeks ago, when I went to York Galleria to make those videos. You can find my video tour of York Galleria and the York Boscovs on the Joshua Stauffer YouTube channel. I didn't take any pictures in Hinkle's, though, but I stopped there on the way, because that's where the bus changes for the transfer. I didn't have time to sit down and eat ice cream in there, but I did buy a little pack of dark chocolate Wilbur Buds, which were really good. I ate those on the ride home. But wow, after I watch this episode of Frog and Toad, I'm going to want to go back to Hinkle's and try some of their ice cream. That'd be fun. Hinkle's also makes New York egg creams, and Harriet the Spy loves egg creams. I'll have to try one of these days too. But anyway, let's see if I can get through this without getting too hungry here. Toad looks into the frozen case and says, "Great hats, Mink! There's a lot of ice cream to choose from." He's looking at all the flavors there. All different colors, a bunch of swirls, and that pink one back there actually has little candy hearts in it. Cool. There's some with nuts and some with little lemon slices. Toad asks what flavors he has. Then Mink grabs his banjo off the wall, and then he begins to sing all the flavors. Let me turn on the closed captions here so I can catch them all for you. It says, "We've got raspberry strawberry, huckleberry ground cherry, peanut butter coconuts, Rocky Road and Fluffernutter." Is that supposed to be like a peanut butter marshmallow kind of thing? Oh my gosh, I liked those sandwiches when I was a kid. My mom used to pack them in my lunchbox for me years ago. And even after I stopped going to public school and just did homeschool, my mom continued to make those for me. They were really good. Bubblegum wild plum. Try that peach, I'll give you some. And then Mink just grabs a little spoonful of peach ice cream and feeds it to Toad. That was the kind of ice cream that when I was 3 years old, I thought it was called porridge. I'll tell you that story again later on when we talk about Little Bear, but I'll just go ahead and tell it now. I don't mind telling that story twice. So on Little Bear, in the episode Sleepover, Father Bear was telling the story of Goldilocks, and he was holding this green bowl and telling the parts about Goldilocks trying the porridge that was too hot, too cold, and just right. And when I was a little kid, my mom gave me peach ice cream, and I ate it out of a green plastic bowl that to me looked very much like the bowl that Father Bear was holding, and therefore I thought Father Bear was referring to peach ice cream when he was talking about this stuff that Goldilocks was eating, and therefore I thought peach ice cream was called porridge. Not so, though. Peach ice cream is its own thing, and porridge is something completely else. More on that in a different season when we talk about Maurice Sendak's Little Bear, which I'm looking forward to one day. So Mick just takes this spoonful of peach ice cream and just pushes it right into Toad's mouth. Reminds me of the John Matthews version of the cookie story where Toad shoves one of his cookies into Frog's mouth when he tastes it for the first time. Oh, there's also an old-fashioned cash register behind him, one of those fancy metal ones with the buttons. Triple Ripple Choco Sickle, he continues. Pumpkin spice? Okay, this sounds very 2020s. Lemon slice? Oh yeah, because I saw the lemon slices in there. No wonder. Custard cream, mangosteen, jelly bean, and vanilla. Mangosteen, what is that? Let me look it up here. Google says, or actually Wikipedia says, mangosteen, sometimes rendered mangostan, and commonly known as the purple mangosteen, is a tropical evergreen tree with edible fruit native to the Malay Peninsula and Borneo. It has been cultivated extensively in tropical Asia since ancient times. Okay, so it's not actually mango, there's a different kind of fruit called mangosteen. I had never heard of that before. And in the world of Frog and Toad, they have an ice cream flavor of that. I wish I knew which ice cream flavor had those little pink hearts in it. Was that supposed to be jelly bean? Or maybe jelly bean has multiple colors of jelly beans mixed in with vanilla or something. Because I don't know how you would make a single ice cream flavor called jelly bean without having multiple actual jelly beans in it. It's really funny how Mink just kind of finishes the song with jelly bean and then says in his normal voice, and vanilla. That reminds me of that episode of Babar the Elephant. Which one was that? Was that Trading Places? Or... No, the episode is called Cruel to be Kind. It's the second episode of Season 4 of Babar, episode 41. Cruel to be Kind is the one where Zephyr traded places with Pompadour and Cornelius, and so Zephyr was trying to get things taken care of in the castle, while Pompadour and Cornelius took over the duties in the ice cream shop, and they weren't very good at it, and Pompadour was trying to go through all the names of the ice cream just like Zephyr did, and finished off by saying, and vanilla. So I wonder if that's like a common thing in ice cream shops, or at least used to be in the old days, where vanilla would be the last thing mentioned, because it's just very basic. But yeah, Babar was a show that I watched during my preteen years, back when it aired on WGAL in 2009. They showed old reruns of it then on Saturday mornings. WGAL was our NBC station. Who knows when we'll talk about that. Depends how long I decide to do this podcast, I guess. On the counter, there's a little cup of spoons there. At first I thought they were plastic spoons, but I think they're wooden spoons. Would make sense since they live in such an old-fashioned, primitive neighborhood. Wooden spoons used to be a pretty common thing in ice cream shops in the old days. So now, Toad's trying to decide on a flavor. So many flavors to choose from. He says that he and Frog both really like chocolate, but he's kind of considering some of the other flavors too. Ooh, we hear Robin outside. That's the Robin that we saw in last month's episodes, both of them, Cookies and the letter. Robin says, "Hey, Mink, what's the holdup?" Because Toad's trying to decide. So Robin's outside, and okay, there's Rabbit. And is that Snail too? And Raccoon. Alright, so we do get to see the Rabbit after all. So there's still a chance that Rabbit will run into Frog later on, talking about what the crazy things that she's seen. We'll get to that later. But yeah, we also got Snail from the letter, and the Robin from the kite, and a Raccoon from the Lost Button, which we'll talk about next. But we're still barely halfway through the ice cream story here. Mink tells everybody that Toad's trying to decide on a flavor, and they're like, that explains it. That is a very important decision. But Toad can't decide, and he asks Mink to sing all the flavors again. And so he does, and wow, everybody's singing along now. Everybody who's waiting outside. The Robin, the Rabbit, the Raccoon, and the Snail. And whoa, I didn't notice this at first. They're not only singing, they're playing instruments too. Looks like the Raccoon's playing a big bass. The Rabbit's playing some kind of wind instrument. I don't know the names of those things, but I'm gonna guess it's some kind of flute with the little horn-shaped thing at the end, whatever you'd call that. And Robin is playing the washboard. Where'd they get those instruments all of a sudden? They sure came prepared. Snail's not playing anything, he's just singing along. Oh, that's funny. But it seems that everybody in town knows the words to Mink's ice cream song. And that's a good sign. It means Mink's ice cream shop is doing some good business. So Toad finally comes up with an idea. He says, "We will take 1 scoop of each." Yeah, right, Toad. You're gonna get chocolate, aren't you? 1 for you and 1 for Frog, right? That's what happens in the book. Whoa! Okay, I was wrong. He's actually doing it. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is a game changer. This is different from the book. Toad got 2 ice cream cones, and how many scoops are on there? Let's see if they'll zoom out. Oh, okay. There's 5 scoops on each cone, and they're each different. So let me listen to this song one more time. Are there 10 flavors then? It sounds to me like there's 18 flavors. I counted them again on the song, but Toad said he was going to try everything, and he's got 10 flavors. So does that mean some of those flavors are actually combined? Yeah, I don't know, because if there's a total of 18 flavors, then there would be 9 scoops on each cone if they were divided in 2. But the animators only drew the cones with 5 scoops each different flavors. Maybe some of them are kind of like squished together in between so you can't really see them. Maybe there's a half scoop on each layer. Maybe he did it that way to try and make it a little bit easier on Toad. That could be. But yeah, my goodness gracious. They're really raising the stakes for this one. Because, okay, I'm just going to tell you what happens next in the book. So in the book, Toad buys these 2 really huge chocolate ice cream cones. Like, the top parts, like the actual ice cream scoops, are bigger than his head. And as he's carrying them back to Frog, the ice cream melts in the sun. He gets it all over him, makes a huge mess along the way, and scares all the neighbors in the process. So instead of having 2 gigantic chocolate cones, Toad's got these really tall cones with tons of flavors on them. Okay, Apple TV, this is gonna get crazy. Now, Raccoon, who, by the way, is much larger than all the other characters we see here, makes me wonder how he fits through the door, says, "Wow, Toad got every flavor. Good choice, Toad." And Toad says, "Yes, the best choice is not having to choose at all." Okay. Not having to choose is, I guess, the easiest choice. I don't know if that necessarily means it's the best choice. I guess Toad's about to learn that the hard way. There's a little sign next to the door hanging on the tree with a little ice cream cone and an arrow pointing to the right, away from the door, so I wonder if there's some kind of window in the back where bigger animals who can't fit inside can get their ice cream. Almost like a walk-up or a drive-through window. It might be, because I see another little awning around the corner there. And yeah, inside the store, there was that window along the side, and it had a little, one of those silver bells that you, like, ring for assistance. So I guess that's where Raccoon's gonna get his, then. His ice cream. Toad says, "Now Frog can try every sweet, cool flavor." I guess they're each gonna try all the flavors together, I guess. Oh man, Clementine would be so jealous of Toad right now if she were watching this. Clementine, the main character of the books by Sarah Pennypacker, is one of my favorite children's book characters. Clementine has this problem of, she doesn't have a choosing problem, she has a not choosing problem. She says that it's easy to choose one kind of candy or one pair of shoes from the store, but the problem is that if she chooses one, she has to not choose everything else. And she gets into all kinds of dilemmas with that. I believe it was the second Clementine book. Neither of her parents were looking forward to taking her shoe shopping, because Clementine ended up trying on every single pair of shoes in the store and just couldn't decide, and finally in the end she decided she wanted the first pair that she tried on. I totally get that. I often feel as well that the first of everything is often the best. A lot of the time, not always, but yeah. Clementine by Sarah Pennypacker. You should definitely check those out, especially if you're a fan of Frog and Toad or Harriet the Spy. Okay, Toad's leaving, and Robin's next. She's finally gonna get her ice cream. I mean, I'm glad Toad is very generous by thinking of how pleased Frog will be by buying all these flavors, but still not so sure this is a good idea. Well, actually, I know this is not a good idea because I've read the book, but we'll find out why in a few moments here. So he's walking along, singing the ice cream song to himself. Raspberry, huckleberry, ground cherry. And okay, the bottom scoop of one of the cones, the pink one, I'm not even gonna bother guessing which flavor they are. That'd be too complicated. Drips down onto Toad's sleeve, just like it did in the book. In fact, the entire tower of ice cream is kind of melting here. And yep, there's some ice cream falling on his head. What for a little animal he just walked by? Oh, it was a bug, okay. A big beetle. Meanwhile, Frog is still waiting for Toad. He's got the picnic blanket all laid out. There's Toad again. He's walking along with his face covered in ice cream. He just ran into a dandelion. I'll bet he's gonna be all fuzzy now. Coming out from behind the leaves. Yeah, he's got dandelion fluff on him and a few leaves now. Oh, there's Squirrel. He's about to freak out. Yep. Says, "What is that scary thing? Ah!" And now he's running towards Frog. Or she is. We have a little bit of a different order here than we have in the book. In the book, first the mouse runs by and says to Frog, "I just saw something awful. It was big and brown." And then the squirrel comes by and says, "Something covered with sticks and leaves is moving this way." And then Rabbit hops along and says, "Here comes a thing with horns. Run for your life." But it seems like Squirrel's explaining everything right away, so I don't know if we're going to see the mouse and the rabbit again or not. We might, though. Squirrel also points out that the scary thing he just saw made all kinds of weird, scary sounds, which I assume was just Toad saying, "Whoa! Ah! Frog! Help! Where are you? I can't see!" Now, on the TV show, Frog's starting to get a little bit worried. "Oh, that big thing is out there somewhere," he says, "and Toad is out there all alone." He was trying to get the umbrella set up, but it closed on top of him, covered his face, and he fell down. But still, that's not as big of a complicated situation that Toad's in right now. He's all covered in ice cream and leaves and twigs, looking as creepy as ever. Oh, here's Field Mouse, okay. And the mouse ran away and ran over to Frog. What's he gonna say? Mouse pretty much says the same thing that Squirrel says, though. It's just something big and scary covered with leaves and twigs. He doesn't say that the thing is big or brown, though, because the ice cream is all different colors. It's not just brown chocolate ice cream like it is in the book. I wonder if anybody's gonna mention a thing with horns. Toad doesn't have the cones on his head yet, but maybe he will. We'll see. Oh, here we go. Tripped and fell, and now the horns are stuck to his face. They're kind of on the sides of his head, though. I wonder if they'll end up on top in a second. Oh, poor Toad, he says, "What is happening to me?" Oh, I'll bet that's making Frog wonder if the thing got him. If that monster is attacking Toad. Yeah, as much as I like ice cream, I'm so glad I'm not in the mess that Toad's in right now. If this had happened to me when I was a kid, I would have been horribly upset. I mean, I never liked getting messy or playing in the mud, and I didn't even like getting my clothes wet. So having ice cream all over me like that would have been pure heck in my mind. And I didn't like having my face painted either. So Frog's looking around, waiting, wondering what's happening with Toad, hoping he's okay. And I don't know if Frog saw him yet or not, but on the other end of the pond we can see Toad coming along, and like he's just so out of it and disoriented that he's not even really saying anything audible. He's just he really does sound like a monster now the way he's vocalizing. Oh, here comes Robin. So does this mean we're gonna get Robin's reaction instead of Rabbit's? Robin says, "Frog, you better fly. I just saw something scary coming this way." And Frog says, "But I can't fly, I'm a frog." Robin says, "Then run." Oh, that's funny. But Frog doesn't want to run away either, because he promised Toad that he'd wait right there by the pond for him. So what's he gonna do now? Frog can now hear Toad and kind of see him. Frog hides behind a rock, just like he did in the book. And after hearing the thing cry out a couple times, he starts thinking that it sounds familiar. But he's not sure yet. He says, "What is that thing? It's calling my name!" Frog does eventually figure it out, though. He says, "Oh, that's not just a scary thing, that's Toad." He doesn't say "good heavens" like he did in the book, though. The next part's pretty accurate. Toad falls into the pond. As he's in the water, all the ice cream washes away. Frog pulls him out of the pond. Frog's very happy to see Toad again. He explains that everybody was freaking out over this scary thing and how he found out that it wasn't a scary thing at all, it was Toad. But Toad's very upset because all the sweet cold ice cream is washed away. I noticed that he just says blah instead of drat. I don't know if Toad says drat at all in this show. Not that I can remember. He said drat quite a few times in the books. Fortunately, Frog totally understands how Toad is feeling now. He says, "You wanted to do something special for us, and it didn't turn out the way you wanted." But Frog very quickly cheers up and stands up and says, "I know what we can do." And then they go back to the ice cream shop together. Yep. Yeah. Now that they're at the ice cream shop together, they can eat their ice cream together right away. No waiting, no melting. So I guess Snail, Raccoon, and Rabbits already got their ice creams because they're no longer there. They don't have to wait in line. So they go inside, and Mink welcomes Toad back and says hello to Frog and says, "Toad, you must be really hungry for ice cream today." I guess Mink assumes that he came back for more, even after all that. Gee whiz, for ice cream cones that tall, I would think there'd be some kind of contest or something to see if you can eat that much in under a certain amount of time. I think Kinkles does that. They have some kind of ice cream eating race, like eat this much within however much time, and I think it's free then. I'm not sure how they do that. Anyway, Toad helps Mink understand that he didn't really eat any yet, and that there was a little bit of an accident, and Mink has seen it happen before, apparently, because he totally gets it. Now, Frog looks into the frozen case and tries to decide on a flavor, and asks Mink what he has, and how he's gonna sing the song once more. Here we go. Got raspberry, strawberry, huckleberry, ground cherry, peanut butter, coconut, Rocky Road and Fluffernutter, bubblegum, wild plum, try the peach, I'll give you some. Triple ripple chocolate sickle, pumpkin spice and lemon spice, custard cream, mango steam, jelly bean, and vanilla. And then Frog and Toad look at each other and say at the same time, We'll have chocolates. Yes! Welcome back to Faithful Adaptation Land, folks. I knew that was coming. And then, yep, ends the same way as the book story ends. They sit under the shade of a large tree and eat their chocolate ice cream cones together. Frog concludes by saying, "This is the very best way to spend a hot summer day, eating ice cream together." And he also says to Toad, "Yeah, I'm glad you're not a scary thing." Toad says, "Me too." Okie dokie. That was Frog and Toad, Season 1, Episode 2A, Ice Cream. A very tasty story indeed, I must say. One of these days I definitely want to get out to Hinkle's again and indulge in some of their frozen delicacies. Now that I think about it, I'm kind of glad that John Matthews didn't try to adapt this episode, because as much as I like his work, seeing that kind of ice cream mess in claymation, that would be really creepy, actually. I don't know how they would manage to do that without making it look really horrifying. Because in the old days, a lot of, horror films and monster movies were stop-motion type stuff. I remember the first time I read this book, it was actually not in the book Frog and Toad All Year. When I was in, I think, either first or second grade, there was tons of books in our classroom. I went to New School Montessori, which used to be called the New School of Lancaster, and in that room they had grades 1, 2, and 3 all together, so one of those years I was in that same room, they had those books, and they had these little mini Frog and Toad books. They came in a box set called Summer Days with Frog and Toad, and it had these 4 little individual books: The Kite, Ice Cream, The Garden, and The Letter. These tiny little books that each contained one chapter from one of the books. And Ice Cream was one of them, and that was the first time I read that story. On the front of the book was the final illustration from that chapter, where Frog and Toad eating the ice cream under the tree, and on the back was a picture of Toad falling into the pond. But yeah, I remember reading that little book before I read the entire Frog and Toad All Year book. Now the 5 chapters in Frog and Toad All Year, there's 4 of them for each of the seasons, and then the 5th one is a Christmas story. For winter, they've got Down the Hill, spring, Around the Corner, summer, Ice Cream of course, and then for fall they have The Surprise, and then the last one is winter again, Christmas Eve. And we'll eventually get to see all of those stories on the Apple TV series. Alright, so that was Ice Cream. Let's take a look now at today's B episode. It is now time to talk about Frog and Toad Season 1, Episode 2B, A Lost Button, based on the 3rd chapter of the book Frog and Toad Are Friends. Now, this one is definitely a classic. I know this story very well. I listened to the Frog and Toad Are Friends audio cassette at school, the same school where I read that little ice cream book, and this was also another one of those episodes that John Matthews did a version of. So as we go through this one, I will compare Apple TV's rendition of The Lost Button to the original book story and the John Matthews version. Here we go. This episode's title card features a hollow log. Frog peeks out from behind it, and Toad's head pops up out of a hole in the hollow log. The log's just laying flat on the ground. So I wonder if that's supposed to be them looking for the lost button. I'm not sure, because then they just look at each other and smile, so maybe they're just having fun playing. It's interesting how these animated title cards sort of apply to the story, but kind of in a subtle, indirect way. It gives you a little bit of an idea of what you're about to see without giving away the story. Interesting. Alright, so in the book, the Lost Button story begins with Toad and Frog going for a long walk. They walk through a meadow, they walk through the woods, and they walk by the river, and then at last they come back home to Toad's house. And that's when they discover that Toad lost one of the buttons on his jacket, and then they decide to go back to all the places where they walked to try to find it. And in the John Matthews version, it's 99% identical to the book story, with just a few very minor tweaks here and there. So let's see how Apple TV does it. It looks like they're in the meadow with some very tall flowers. Here's Frog and Toad, and Toad's wearing a hat. That's different. I don't know if I've ever seen Toad wear a hat before. Hey, this looks like the hat that Toad wore on the cover of Frog and Toad Together when Frog and Toad were on the bicycle. That's cool. I don't think Toad ever wore that hat in any of the stories. It's not the hats that Toad got for his birthday in Days with Frog and Toad. No, this is that little brown one that he wore when he was riding the bicycle. That's cool. He's actually gonna wear that within one of the stories on the show. Excellent. Yep, this is the meadow, all right. And Frog is absolutely loving this walk in the meadow, kind of dancing along as he walks through it, enjoying the smell of the grass. But Toad does not like the smell of the grass. It's making him sneeze. Toad's kind of like my mom in a way. Whenever there was freshly mowed grass, her sinuses would often get a little bit antsy. Frog's enjoying the gentle breeze, but Toad does not like that either. It keeps blowing his hat away. Frog's enjoying the warm sun as well, but Toad says it's too bright. Toad's not having very much fun on this walk. He hasn't even mentioned that his feet hurt yet, like he does in the book, but he probably will eventually. Ah, that's why Toad's wearing the hats, or trying to wear a hat, because the sun's shining in his eyes and it helps shield it. Okay. Oh yeah, there it is. Toad says, Frog, my feet are starting to hurt. Oh, at least the hat came back. The wind just blew it right back and Frog caught it. So Frog says, let's go explore the woods instead. The path there is much softer for sore feet. Is it, though? I would think the grass would be softer than the ground in the woods. Well, maybe in the woods where they're hiking, they have a bunch of, soft, dry pine needles cushioning the ground. That might be what Frog is referring to. Or maybe since Frog and Toad are so small, the dirt and mud are nice and squishy. Like squishier there in the woods compared to the grass in the meadow. I'm not sure. But for whatever reason, Frog thinks that Toad will be more comfortable in the woods, and he's trying to talk him into it. Frog also mentions that the woods won't be as sunny or sneezy. I'm surprised he didn't mention the fact that there'd be less wind in the woods, too. But Toad seems game for this. He's willing to go to the woods now, so there they go. Oh, that is some very pretty artwork there. Beautifully painted backgrounds once again. They got all the greenery there, and the tree trunks, and the beams of sunlight shining through. Can't believe I'm saying this, but the art style of this show is almost better than Little Bear, actually. If they ever do a Little Bear reboot, I hope the guys that did Frog and Toad will animate it. That would be perfect. Not that I particularly want to see a reboot of that show, because most reboots of shows that I grew up with are nowhere near as good as the original, but if it had this kind of animation style, I would watch it for sure. Or at least try to. As they walk through the woods, Frog points out that the woods are nice and peaceful and quiet, and Toad agrees, but the peaceful quiet of the woods makes Toad kind of sleepy. Frog says the shadows are so mysterious. Toad says, the dark parts remind me of bedtime. And Toad's feet still hurt. I'm actually not surprised. Didn't think the woods path would be any better for sore feet anyway. So then Frog just grabs Toad's hand and drags him out of the woods, and they go right to the river. Before Frog even has a chance to talk Toad into it, just drags him right over there. Man, Toad doesn't even like the idea of soaking his feet for a while. Frog says, isn't this nice? Toad says, maybe for a frog. Oh, that's right. Toad doesn't like water near as much as Frog does, because in the swim story, Toad wears a bathing suit and Frog doesn't. Ooh, and they see a giant trout jumping through the water, and it splashes Toad. Yeah, Toad's not having the best of days here. It's interesting how Frog often tends to see the best of things, and Toad tends to look at the worst of things. Then Frog finally acknowledges the fact that this has been a very hard day for Toad, and offers to take Toad back home. And Toad says that's the best idea I've heard all morning. And so they head on back to Toad's house. And Toad's happy to be home, until he discovers that one of the buttons on his jacket is missing. Frog says, well, at least the jacket still has lots of other buttons on it. But Toad says, no, this jacket it's gotta have all the buttons. He wants it to be perfect. Frog says, then we will sew a new one on. But Toad is insistent that the jacket has the exact same buttons that it had before. You know, I've heard people say that there's a possibility that Toad might have a high-functioning autism, because he sometimes struggles a little bit with unexpected situations and has a hard time being flexible. He's kind of a rigid thinker. He reminds me a lot of Carl from Carl the Collector, because I've seen Carl feel this exact same way. He gets frustrated when things don't turn out perfectly, and whenever possible he wants things done a certain way. So yeah, it's a really interesting theory that Toad might be autistic. I can totally see that, because even when I was a kid, I've always found myself relating more to Toad than to Frog. Especially since Frog is taller than Toad, I always assumed that Toad was the kid and Frog was the grown-up, despite the fact that Toad has a much deeper voice. Watching and reading Frog and Toad when I was young, I often felt that Toad's kind of like me, and Frog's kind of like either my mom or my dad or one of my therapists. So that makes me appreciate this show even more. But back to the Apple TV show, it's interesting how Frog suggested that Toad either accept his jacket as it is, with missing button, or sew a new button on before suggesting that they go back and look for the original one. I guess Frog assumes that that would sort of be a last resort, considering how Toad is exhausted from that walk and that he didn't really enjoy it that much. But since Toad doesn't like the other options, Frog says, then we'll just have to go back to all the places where we walked and try to find it. And surprisingly, Toad is up for it. He likes the idea. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get his button back. So here they go again. Toad says, I'm so glad to have a friend like you, Frog. I'm really glad that Toad always acknowledges when Frog does something nice for him. Like, Toad always thanks Frog and shows him how grateful he is. That is wonderful. I don't think Toad did that quite as much in the books or in the John Matthews version. So I'm glad they added that to the Apple TV version. It almost makes up for Toad's unhappy attitude earlier with the walk. So they go back to the meadow, the place where the grass smelled sweet and made Toad sneeze. They remember the gentle sneeze and Toad losing his hat, retracing all their steps. Then Toad sits down on the rock again where he said his feet hurt. And Toad says, blah. But Frog says, no, you said that when we were at the river. Nice attention to detail, Frog. Frog looks down behind some of the flower stems, and he finds a button. A very, very, very tiny button, since Frog and Toad are tiny to begin with. One thing that both the Apple TV and John Matthews version have in common, though, is that Frog hands the button to Toad before Toad says that this is not his button. Because in the book, Toad says each time, that is not my button, looking at the button that Frog or one of the other characters is holding. But in the two animated versions, in both versions, Toad holds the button himself and says, this is not my button. And of course, the first one, he says, this button is black. My button was white. Frog tells Toad to keep the button just in case, and he puts it in his pocket. And here comes Robin. She says, clear the runway, here I come. And lands in front of Frog and Toad right there in the meadow. Did I mention that Robin wears a very nice hat with a bonnet? And she asks Frog and Toad if they lost a button. She says she's found one. And Toad picks it up and says, no, this is not my button. This button has 2 holes. My button had 4. But I should also mention that this is Robin who gives Toad this button. It's not a sparrow. They just used the Robin character. I guess Robin appears in almost every episode in this series. In the books, Robin was originally from the Kite story. There was actually a couple of Robins who were sitting in a bush laughing at Toad because he had trouble flying his kite. I certainly hope they're not as cruel on Apple TV as they were in the book. They probably won't be, because so far Robin seems like a pretty nice character. So now they're gonna go to the woods and look some more. Now in the book, this is the part where Frog finds a button that is small, but not as big as Toad's buttons. And yep, same kind of button on Apple TV. And here's the little part they added. Toad shouts out, where are you, button? Then they hear a voice saying, over here! But that wasn't the button answering, that was Raccoon, yep! And in all 3 versions, like I mentioned before, Raccoon is huge, next to the small Frog and Toad. And yep, the button that Raccoon found is indeed square, just like in the other versions. So far it seems like everything in this episode is pretty accurate. They didn't really change a whole lot. They did show us a little bit more of what happened with the walk in the beginning. We didn't really see the walk at all in the John Matthews version. They just showed us Frog and Toad coming back from their walk. And the book described their walk, but the illustrations didn't show it either. It just showed Toad looking at his jacket and the button was gone. So it was cool we got to see that walk in the beginning. Now the button search is pretty much the same. Ooh, until now, something's changing here. In the book, the next thing that happens is Frog and Toad go back to the river, and they find a button that's thin instead of thick, and then Toad jumps up and down and screams, "The whole world is covered with buttons and not one of them is mine," and then he runs home. But now he got something different. Frog just made a sign with a picture of a button on it. So is he gonna hang signs all over the forest telling people about the lost button? See if anybody will turn it in? Oh, there's a squirrel at the ice cream shop, but Squirrel hasn't seen it. Or maybe he has. It's a clover-shaped button, a little green clover with 3 leaves. Actually, it looks like 6 leaves, but it's 3 with 2 sections on each leaf, if you know what I mean. It's got a little heart in the middle, too. And yep, there's Rabbit. I knew there was a rabbit on this show. We did see Rabbit briefly in the ice cream story, just not in the way that Rabbit was presented originally. So, has Rabbit seen a button? Rabbit's standing in front of her house, and there's a big carrot in a wheelbarrow there. Not quite as big as the big carrot in Maggie and the Ferocious Beast, though. Still pretty big. And Rabbit has a star-shaped button. Still not the one Toad's looking for. And now they're seeing if Snail has one. And Snail spits out a button into Toad's hand. It's a blue swirly one, all covered in Snail's saliva. Now we have a dragonfly wearing a hat. Was there a Yes, there was a dragonfly in the swim story. In swimming, there was the turtle, the lizards, the snake, the dragonflies, and the field mouse. Everybody's got a part to play in this show. This is awesome. So Dragonfly has a little pink button with 2 holes. Somebody else, is that Mole's hand? Just gave Toad a beet. That's not a button. It's either a beet or a turnip, some kind of root vegetable. Yeah, they zoomed out and that's Mole. Definitely not a button. And as the day goes on, Toad finds a blue diamond-shaped button. A reddish-brown triangle button. Another small one. An octagon button. And another clover. This pocket is full of buttons now. Frog's holding up the sign, showing it to a family of mice. I didn't know there was more than one mouse in this neighborhood. The only 2 stories in the book where we saw mice were the ice cream and the swim. So I guess field mouse is a bunch of brothers and sisters, or some kind of relatives. The mice are all running off to get buttons. Holy cow, they got tons of them! All different kinds of shapes and sizes and colors. There's a butterfly button and striped ones and little flowers and wow, all kinds of designs there. This is amazing. Oh, that one there with the 2 lines going the 2 different ways. My mom had a jacket that had buttons like that. She wore that for years. It was one of her favorite jackets. One of them has kind of a jagged edge, looks a little bit like a gear. The yellow one looks like a sun. That one almost looks like some kind of bread roll. And even after all these buttons, Toad is really sad and disappointed. He says, "Oh, the whole world is covered with buttons and none of them are mine." He doesn't really say it in the overly angry tone that he does in the John Matthews version or in the book. He's just kind of let down and sad and ready to give up. And then he just very gently walks home instead of running and stomping. And Frog says to the mice, "This has been a hard day for Toad." Yeah! It was a hard day for Toad earlier when he went on that uncomfortable walk, and it's still hard for him now with this unsuccessful button search. I must say, though, it's really cool to see all those buttons, because when I was a little kid, my mom had a sewing business. She used to make these table runners for the quilt shop at Kitchen Kettle Village in Lancaster County. And so we spent a lot of time in fabric stores, and I remember when I was little looking at the display of buttons in the fabric stores, looking at all the different kinds that they had, all these different funny shapes and colors. They had this like round spinning display with all the hooks with the buttons tied to the cardboard. I used to enjoy looking at all those different buttons while we were fabric shopping. Mom didn't usually buy any of those buttons though, but I liked looking at them. There's a place out in Goodville just past Blue Ball in Lancaster County, past New Holland and Blue Ball on Route 23 called Zink's Fabric Outlet. And they have this huge, deep bin full of buttons. Like, you gotta grab a scoop and look at them and dig through them and pick out the ones you want. Like, buy buttons in bulk. So this is interesting. They left out the parts with the button that was thin and not thick by the river. And instead they did all this big montage of everybody else finding buttons for Toad and him getting all those crazy ones along the way. That was a really fun addition. I like that. But I do feel kind of bad for Toad that he never found the button he was looking for. Not entirely bad, because I know how it ends, but we'll see what happens in a second here. I wonder if those mice are younger, because they didn't say a word in this, they just squeaked like real mice. Maybe they're Field Mouse's younger siblings. They happen to know where all the buttons are in their stash. So Toad heads home, flops down behind the door, and he looks down at the floor, and there on the floor, he sees his white, four-holed, big, round, thick button. Toad's getting ready to sew the button back onto his jacket. He says to himself that tomorrow he's going to tell Frog how sorry he is that he made Frog go through all that searching for nothing when the button was right there in his house the whole time. Hey, he's got one of those tomato pincushion things. I remember those from the fabric stores too. In fact, I think Mom might have had one at one point. And just before he starts sewing, he dumps out all the buttons that were in his pockets and the beat. Why did Mole give Toad a beat? Like, did he mishear Toad? Or maybe Mole just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have any buttons, but here, you can have this, in case you're hungry." And seeing all the extra buttons gives Toad an idea. And then we dissolve to the next day, and there's Toad just laying there on the table. Was he up all night working on sewing all the buttons on his jacket? Apparently so. He didn't sew all the buttons on, though, because he's still got a few stuck to his face. And looks like he got hungry and ate some of the beets. So now Toad heads over to Frog's house, and he's carrying a package. A box with a blue bow around it. Now this is the part where Toad gives his jacket to Frog, but Toad is wearing a jacket, so I guess he has more than one jacket. Which is interesting because in the book, this seems to be the only jacket that Toad owns, at least the only one that's green like that, and he just takes it off and gives it to Frog, and at the end of that story, he's just shirtless. And then, so that's the third chapter of Frog and Toad Are Friends, and then in chapters 4 and 5, we see Toad wearing different jackets. In the beginning of the swim, he's wearing a jacket that has green and white stripes, and then in the final chapter in the letter, it looks like Toad's just wearing his light green pajamas, at the top and the bottom. Looks like it has green flowers on it instead of the green squares that his regular one has. Which is really weird because in the rest of the book series, Toad is wearing the regular jacket that he wore in the first 3 chapters of the first book. So I don't know what happens with his original jackets after that, because in the other books it doesn't even show all the buttons that he sewed onto it. So yeah, a little bit of continuity error within the books, clashing with the continuity that they put in the second half of the first book. Let's see if they do it better in the Apple TV version. Frog comes out of his house, he sees Toad. He says he's got even more ideas for finding the missing button. Frog says, "Let's set up a giant kite with me on top of it." Whoa. Says maybe I can spy from up high above. Frog says we can also hire a detective. Do they have detectives for lost buttons? Well, you're on Apple TV. You can always give Harriet the Spy a call. I'm sure Harriet's probably in middle school or high school by the time your story takes place. In fact, she's probably in her late teens by now, because Harriet the Spy takes place in the early to mid-60s, and Frog and Toad takes place in the 70s. But anyway, if Frog and Toad and Harriet the Spy crossover would have been epic. Actually, it would be a little bit more like Goldie, because in this universe, Harriet would be huge compared to Frog and Toad. Goldie's another Apple TV show that I haven't watched yet. It's about this little girl who's actually a big giant. I don't know if that's any good or not. I'll check it out one of these days while my subscription's still running. And as Frog's coming up with these ideas, Toad keeps trying to stop him because he has something important to say. Frog! 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 Toad says we can call off the search. This is for you. He hands Frog the box. Frog opens it, and it's Toad's jacket with all the buttons sewed onto it, including the one that was lost. And it looks like that jacket is just slightly more green than the one Toad's wearing right now. I mean, it's kind of green, but it's a little bit more of a brownish green, the one that Toad's currently wearing. Frog pulls out the jacket and admires all the fancy, colorful buttons there on it. And Toad apologizes to Frog and explains that the button was in his house the whole time. He says, "I want you to have this jacket." Frog says, "What? But this is your favorite jacket, Toad." But Toad says, "You're my favorite friend, Frog." Frog puts it on, and just like in the other 2 versions, he jumps for joy. He says, "It's beautiful, it's wonderful, and none of the buttons are falling off." Toad says, I sewed them on very well. Yeah, that's right. Well, actually, he says, I sewed them on extra tight for you, so you'll never have to lose one like I did. And here comes Robin again. Robin asks if they're still looking for the button. She says she's found a few more. Robin's holding something that I thought was a button at first, but I think it's some kind of bag that has some buttons in. A bag that looks like a big button. That's funny. Toad says, nope, we're good. We have enough buttons for now. And Robin says, see you later, and she leaves. And Toad's actually in the mood for a walk today. And so there they go. And they just leave the box and Frog's other jacket right there on the path. Hopefully they'll come back for it later. Alrighty, that was Frog and Toad, Season 1, Episode 2B, A Lost Button. Excellent adaptation of the classic tale. They really did add a lot to make that one more fun, just like they've been doing with all the others. It was fun to see all those cool buttons, and really great to see this version of Frog and Toad tackling this tough situation of trying to find the button and coming up with creative ways to try and find it too, when they couldn't at first. Now, the executive producer and head writer of Harriet the Spy was Will McRobb, but on Frog and Toad, it's Rob Hoege, or Hoege, H-O-E-G-E-E. What else did Rob Hoege do? He was also the executive producer of Stillwater, another Apple TV show, Abby Hatcher, Fuzzly Catcher, Nico and the Sword of Light. He also wrote a bunch of episodes of Teen Titans in the early 2000s. He was a writer and story editor for Generator Rex, Nico and the Sword of Light, Abby Hatcher, and Thunderbirds Are Go. So he's done a bunch of stuff. Now let's take a look here at some of the other voice actors and see if any of these guys did anything else I recognize. It's interesting how they have the voice cast for the individual episodes in these credits. Ice Cream also starring Betsy Sodaro as Squirrel. Betsy Sodaro is also the voice of Kim in Big Nate and Community Sue in Big City Greens. Ron Funches is the voice of Raccoon on Frog and Toad. He also played Cooper in Trolls, Sparko in OKKO Let's Be Heroes, Khaki Bottoms in Infinity Train. Oh, the rabbit from the ball pit car. Okay. I was going to say, who is Khaki Bottoms? But that's who it was. That stuffed bunny that they met in the gymnasium on Infinity Train. Ron did King Shark and Harley Quinn. And wow, he was even the voice of Bluefy in Inside Out 2. John Hogman as Mouse on Frog and Toad. So I guess his name is just Mouse on the show. It's not referred to as Field Mouse. Okay. Oh, he played Charlie Jones in the movie Coraline, if any of you are into that. Celine Luna as Robin. Yeah, that looks like a face that would say, hiya, Toad. She did play Tia Rosita in the movie Coco. Tom Kenny as Mink. Ooh, we got a super long list here. Let's see if I recognize anything. Way back to the 90s. Back in the 90s, and on Rocko's Modern Life, he played Heifer Wolf and Chuck Chameleon. Oh, no way. No way. Tom Kenny is the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants? I'm sure a lot of you guys probably hate me for not recognizing that right away, but the truth is, that's not a show I watched, so I had no idea. In the Powerpuff Girls, Tom Kenny was the mayor of Townsville and the narrator. Oh, was he also Gary on SpongeBob? Yeah, he was. Okay. He played Dog in Cat Dog, Tommy in the movie Hoodwinked. He played Mumbo in Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go. Mr. Willerstein in the movie Meets the Robinsons. Nightbrace, Mr. Wink, and Chester in Codename Kids Next Door. Jake Spider-Monkey in My Gym Partner's a Monkey. Eduardo, Yogi Boo Boo in Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Isaac Sumdac, Starscream, and Scrapper in Transformers. Mr. O'Connor in Betsy's Kindergarten Adventures. Tom Kenny played Rabbit in Winnie the Pooh, the 2011 movie. He was Mr. Lopart and Pat the Hammer in Handy Manny. He was the Ice King in Adventure Time. TJ Botsford in Word Girl, as well as Dr. Two Brains. Bo Monkey in The Fresh Beat Band of Spies. Dr. Octopus in Ultimate Spider-Man, along with Dr. Otto Octavius and Vulture. Charlie in Doc McStuffins and Farmer Mac. And Trevor in Kif. Alright, so that's some selections from the long resume of Tom Kenny, who played Mink on Frog and Toad. And the only two speaking roles in The Lost Button were Robin and Raccoon. We already went through those. Okay then, so that was Frog and Toad, Season 1, Episode 2. I Ice Cream and A Lost Button. Both really good. Trying to think which one I liked better. I think I enjoyed The Lost Button more because it was great to see everybody in the community helping Toad find his button and find all those extra ones along the way. And also, no offense to the ice cream story, but seeing Toad get into that huge mess just made me think I would definitely not want that to happen to me, even though I like ice cream. I want ice cream in me, not on me. You know what I mean? But overall, lots of fun there. So let's see what next month's episodes are going to be for Frog and Toad. Okay, Season 1, Episode 3 will be Spring and Dragons and Giants. So we'll talk about that on the third Saturday of March, assuming that all goes well, my voice still works. Spring is based on the first chapter of Frog and Toad Are Friends, and Dragons and Giants is the fourth chapter of Frog and Toad Together. So I'm looking forward to comparing those stories with you guys. But next week, we're taking a trip back to the 60s to take a look at the second episode of Apple TV's animated classic, Harriet the Spy. Next week's Harriet episode will be Coat Vote. I sure hope Harriet can keep as warm as I'm trying to keep warm in this middle of this winter. Whatever happens, I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun, because last month when we did Harriet the Spy, we ended up making it 2 parts. Hopefully I'll be able to do it in just one podcast program, but we shall see. Until we meet again, this is Joshua Stauffer, signing out. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening. I will see you next time. Kids TV and Me is a fan-made podcast and is not affiliated with any of the programs, production companies, or networks mentioned on the show. My primary goal of this podcast is to shine a spotlight on some of the underrated classics from my childhood, and to help you make informed decisions about your children's screen time. If you are enjoying this podcast, don't forget to leave a rating and a review. And if your podcast provider has a comment section, let me know your thoughts on the topics we've talked about today. To keep the conversation going, you can also leave me a message on Instagram at Joshua Stauffer Creations. And don't forget to check out my Substack page at joshuastauffer1.substack.com, where you can find more information on my other creative works, including my Little Joshua webcomics, and my book, Meet Zoe Richards, which is available in paperback on Amazon. Remember to always pay close attention to what your children are watching, and as always, don't be childish, but stay childlike.